Hi, this is another one of these videos about María, Llena, Eres, Gracia. This particular one is going to be about Maria and kind of how to go about a character analysis of her. Again, these videos are aimed at students of A-level Spanish studying film for their writing paper, their oral, particularly the WJC paper, but again, potentially for university as well, or maybe for people who just want to know a bit more about the film, but that's who it's aimed at. And again, this isn't a definitive version, these are just my ideas. Hopefully this will get you thinking. Again, you know, the best things as a student is for you to think about what I say, react to it, agree, disagree, you know, develop your own opinions about the film, about the characters. I'm going to do 3 videos I think about Maria, because obviously she's in every scene of the film, she's the main character, there's a lot you can talk about, and that's something to be aware of if you deal with a question about Maria. It's probably better to deal with an aspect of Maria, for your oral for example, to do it in sufficient detail. But this one's going to be about up to her kind of leaving her town with Franklin. The second video I'll do will be from kind of the recruitment scene by Franklin up to probably the end of the interrogation in the airport in New York. And the third one will be from when she kind of escapes from the hotel in New York and then to the end of the film. So the first thing is actually how to analyse. The thing you've got to be careful of is not to describe. This isn't something where you're just going to say Maria is stubborn, she is frustrated. It's really important to say why. So when you're structuring paragraphs about this, you should really start with an idea. Don't start with when Maria is working in the hotel, is in the factory, in the plantation, she feels this. Actually give a kind of idea. Something like, for example, Maria feels frustrated due to the society pressures around her. Okay, something like that gives more of an opinion, starts the paragraph a lot better. Then you look to give an example of where this happens, somewhere in the scene. Alternatively, you could use a quote, which are really good. That's something you should definitely learn. And then thirdly, you should explain why it's important. And again, that explanation is explain why it's relevant for the film as a whole, why it's relevant for part of Marston's argument. For example, this explains why Maria, many women might be in a similar situation, for example, and end up being involved in the drug world, something like that. So you need to explain why this particular aspect is important as well. So idea, example, explain. Right, so the first thing I'm going to say about Maria, and again this is at the start of the film, we're only going to talk the first 15 minutes or so, is that she's not a perfect person. I think she is not a ideal hero, lovely, great, wonderful, good to her mum. She's not that kind of person. For Marston it was really important that this was the case. He didn't want someone that was an absolute angel that gets kind of brought to the dark side of the drug world. That would kind of seem a little bit Hollywood, a little bit too perfect. And again, it's not particularly realistic as well. So Maria is not a perfect person. She is quite immature. She is selfish. She is stubborn. She is not a particularly easy person to employ, for example. But that's important. She isn't perfect. You know, she is 17. And again, part of the reason why she's not a perfect person is that you've got to have room for a kind of personal evolution. And again, a road trip movie, which this is, amongst other things, means that the personality will evolve, she will learn, and that's part of the reason why she's not perfect. The second thing I'd say about Maria is that she's set up to be quite representative of a lot of Colombian women. And again, it's not all Colombian women. This is a particular type of person. And again, don't fall into the trap of global words like all, because she isn't. She's a rural, young, white, and kind of lower class woman. Her problems that she faced will be different from, for example, Indian women or Afro-Colombian women or women in the city or upper class women. So again, she's not indicative of all Colombian women, but a certain type of Colombian women, and particularly those who might be vulnerable to becoming involved in the drug trade or criminality due to the social circumstances present in this town. So a lot of the social circumstances that her character is influenced by and shaped by will also be shaping lots of other women in Colombia in similar situations. And again, in a previous video I talked about the fact she's called Maria. It's the most common name in Colombia for women, and probably South America as a whole. So again, you can see her as being a representative, quite symbolic of a certain type of woman of this type of age and so on. So let's start off with my kind of first point in the fact that I think her character and her personality is shaped by a kind of a whole raft of social and geographical factors, and what we see is how she reacts to them, the situation, the society, the social pressures, the geography of the town really affects her, and she reacts to that. Her kind of reactions and her personality are shaped by that. If we talk about the geography to start with, she seems to be someone that's very bored, very kind of asphyxiated, very smothered, very kind of trapped, very encased. That's something that we see a great deal. So the first thing I would say is that the geography of the town affects her in this kind of way. She seems frustrated, unsatisfied. A few very clear examples. The very first thing we see is her in the bus. She's kind of surrounded by lots of people. It's all very grey, it's very hilly, it's very rural, there's not very much development. The cows are kind of getting in the way of the bus. Also, we see a kind of downward shot the whole time, so we're always looking down on her. It feels like she's not going up, she's not escaping. She's always kind of entrapped within this particular area. The kind of the greyness, the kind of the surrounding nature of the hills almost kind of put that physical case of entrapment upon her, which then is released actually when she's on the bike with Franklin and she goes through a kind of cliff, for example. Similarly, at home, she's similarly kind of geographically smothered. You know, the house feels very small, it's very congested, it's very crowded. She reacts to that, feeling that she needs something more. She even says that. She says, "Oh, I don't want bread, I want something else." It seems like a very throwaway comment, but it does show that Maria is frustrated by and unsatisfied by the things around her. One more example of the need to escape is in the kissing scene where she's there with Juan. They're having a bit of a snog, and again she's looking upwards, she's looking at the sky. She wants to move upwards, she wants to get out, she wants to do something different. And again, even to the extent of just climbing up the building to do something different, just to get away, just to move above the routine, the humdrum tedium, is something that she really needs. The fact that Juan, for example, isn't prepared to do that shows that that's a very common attitude of maybe the other people in the town. They don't see, they're kind of have been smothered into silence by this place. They've kind of just lived with it. They don't feel the same need that Maria does to escape, to do something else, to go beyond everything that is kind of surrounding her. So I think that's quite an important aspect, the fact that geography really affects her frustration and her sense of entrapment and her asphyxiation as a person. There isn't the kind of room to grow. The second kind of aspect that I think I'm going to go on to is the kind of family pressures and how this impacts on Maria's character. If we look at the family that she's in, it's a very female dominated family. There is no male figure apart from Pachito, who is her sister Diana's little baby son. So again, this is a common in society as well. For example, in Colombia during this occasion, there was a lot of displacement. Many men might have been obliged to, for example, work elsewhere to try and find jobs. Often they might have been recruited by either paramilitaries or FARC or ELN guerrillas. They might even have been targeted by those same kind of extra state military forces. Again, there is a lot of drug cartel work. It could well be that he might be involved in that. We don't know, it's pure speculation. But what is certainly true is that there is a sense of male absence. This impacts on Maria because she has a feeling of responsibility. She feels, and this is kind of imposed upon her, she has an idea that she has to provide for the family, she has to work, she's the money earner. You could also argue that because there aren't many men there, it potentially gives her some leadership characteristics of her own, the fact that she has to become a leader. We see this in the fact that she kind of takes control of Blanca a lot of the time. She is the one that goes up to Franklin and the other guy at the dance in the town, and kind of introduces Blanca and says Blanca wants to dance with you and so on. So she's she's kind of used to being in charge, I think. And again, I would say that possibly this is due to the fact that the women are having to take on this responsibility, and this is a very common issue in many kind of Colombian towns that have been affected by the internal kind of civil war conflict, drug cartel issues and violence that has been very endemic for about 60 years, unfortunately, in Colombia. Although now there's currently kind of peace talks with FARC, which potentially might lead to some kind of lasting peace, but that remains to be seen. And again, how is Maria kind of affected by this kind of sense of family pressures? Again, she becomes quite frustrated. We've already talked about this. We see her getting very angry with her her mother and her sister at the fact that she has to give her money away. We could talk about her selfishness about this, the fact that she is not really prepared to take on the responsibility of giving everything away all the time. She thinks this is unfair. Everything she's doing is not really for herself, but for someone else. And again, this is a kind of important aspect, I think, early on, is that she doesn't take responsibility for others, or she's not prepared to take that responsibility yet. She does give money, but it is very resentfully. She kind of blames others, particularly Diana, for saying it's your responsibility to do this, not mine. And again, I think this is something that really will evolve, and this is part of her kind of path towards grace as well. So this not taking on responsibility, her selfishness, and again, it's part of her. She's also more ambitious. I think again, you see that she doesn't want to be stuck in a house providing money. Similarly, I think that the issue of Diana and the mother and the lack of male in her. Those two people's lives impact on her relationship with Juan and what she wants from Juan. Again, these are very, I don't think these are particularly unsurprising or bad characteristics. She's a woman that wants Juan to love her, wants to know that she's going to have security, wants to see if he can be a father for her child, isn't prepared to accept, the drunkenness that Juan demonstrates or his kind of potential abandoning her, perhaps. She wants something more than that. She isn't prepared to settle for second best. I think this is a very important thing about Maria, that she wants to do more than that. Similarly, she's not prepared to accept the kind of the chauvinist situation, the very kind of male-dominated, male patriarchal, hierarchical society that exists. Juan expects her to go and live with his family, even though it's even more crowded. Maria won't do that. She doesn't see why she should be controlled by men. And again, this is also shown in the her job environment. Again, she's very idealistic. Should be more equal. She reacts very badly to the boss's treatment of her in the kind of rose plantation. And again, she's not a great worker. The man says, we've always got problems with you. So we do get this idea of a rebellious streak, someone who, isn't content with what she has. And again, when Josh Marston's talking about this situation in the director's commentary, and again, something that the mother says as well, is that this job is seen as a good one. De-thorning roses and packing roses is seen as a good job. That says a great deal about society. It also shows that all these women are particularly kind of prepared to accept being bossed over by one guy as being just important in order to get some money, which says a lot about the social issues that will lead many to maybe look for more money, which will lead to the temptations of the drug trade, for example. It's also important to say that it's very difficult for workers to react against mistreatment. There have been, if for example workers were to create a trade union, there have been lots of issues in Colombia where trade union leaders have been targeted by paramilitaries linked to landowners, linked to bosses, because they're seen as being linked to the FARC, who are the enemy of the paramilitary. So even protesting against protesting for your rights could potentially be very dangerous as well. So that's just a little kind of social factor worth knowing. But again, Maria's shaped by this. We see her stubbornness. She's very very. She doesn't back down. She isn't going to tolerate unfair treatment. And again, she wants something more. She has an idealistic image of what should be the case. So these are just some of the characteristics. And again, I've said that a lot of the characteristics have been shaped by the situation, how she reacts to them. The other thing that's important is that these factors, these kind of characteristics that Marston imbues upon his protagonist are important because he has to give her the tools to be able to survive in the second part and the third part of the film. If she isn't a leader, determined, resourceful, quite stubborn, quite strong-willed, it's possible that she would not be able to do the things she does. Similarly, it's important as a sense of evolution that she starts thinking about others, for example. She starts taking responsibility for those around her, rather than just thinking everyone's got to do things themselves. But also the fact that she has these social pressures show why it's so easy for someone like Maria to get involved in the drug trade, due to the lack of money, the lack of opportunities, frustration and ambition, a need for something more, not being stuck in one place, the pressures to provide for your family. These are all issues that a lot of people would face and would lead them to be involved in the drug trade. So it's Marston explaining the fact that it's society that often leads to the problem of becoming involved in drugs and immigration, and these potentially are problems that need to be solved, rather than, for example, putting up a wall, which is such a great idea. It's important to deal with the issues at the heart of the problem, and again, that's kind of why these characteristics are important. Again, these are two morals or messages of the film: the kind of decriminalising or the humanising of the immigrant and the drug trafficker, saying why the problems might exist, but also explaining, on a more personal level, how people might evolve who are faced with this. Okay, so that's just all I've got to say about the first 15 minutes or so. Again, there's lots more that probably could be said, but I hope that's been useful to start with.